Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Church of Caboose, and for today's Destiny 2 video, we're going to talk about Trials of Osiris, to include things like tips for going flawless, so that way you can maybe be mediocre like I am, and perhaps have this be an attainable goal, as well as the rewards and my own opinions about these rewards for what you get from doing things like going flawless in Trials of Osiris. And so before we get too far into this, make sure you like the video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more stuff. I try real hard to put out tips and tricks on doing anything and everything that would normally take a good amount of time as fast as possible, as well as guides for things like raids and things that have helped me in my own experience. And then there's also, of course, like reviews / opinions that I get for everyone. And lately, I started a coronavirus vlog since we're all quarantined. And I'm not calling it coronavirus vlog, it's just called vlog. So I'll be looking for the second one here in the very near future. My wife might make an appearance in it, who knows. So I have done it. Oh my god, I finally got flawless. I got real close last weekend a couple of times. This weekend, the weekend of March, I guess 20th, I got real close a couple of more times, and then finally, after hours of grinding, playing, sweating, praying to the RN Jesus of Osiris for matchmaking, I finally got a flawless card, 7-0, put all kinds of pictures up on my Twitter, and you guys are getting a look at the lighthouse. I kind of debated a little bit about, should I put the lighthouse on YouTube, because maybe it would spoil it for some folks. But then I figured, you know what? A lot of people are probably just wanting to see maybe what it is, and perhaps aren't necessarily that worried about if they experience it for the first time themselves. And so this on your screen is in fact the lighthouse. I think it looks really cool. You get to this lighthouse by going 7 wins or 7-0. So you can get 7 wins total, or a flawless run, you will get to this particular place. That is what I have been told. If that is wrong, I Googled. I didn't find a whole lot on Google when I was like, hey, can you go to the lighthouse without being flawless? So I didn't find really anything. So please let me know down below. I did my best to research this, but you definitely get to go here once you go flawless. Saint 14 gives you a pretty cool cutscene thing, and I intentionally decided to not include that audio because I felt like that would be perhaps taking away too much of the experience for those of you that perhaps have not gotten to the lighthouse yet. And I sweated over whether I should activate this or not, because once again, Bungie had a bunch of glitch issues where basically folks weren't getting rewards, and then they put out a tweet saying, hey, at 5 p.m. on Pacific Standard Time, you will now be able to get your rewards, and anything you tried to open beforehand, you will just have to re-earn again. So I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, should I turn this in? Should I get it? I waited for like 5 hours of debating before I actually just went for it. Opened up the chest, and I had a big pause of like, oh, is it going to happen? And then a big sigh of relief when everything dropped, as you saw right there on screen. So that is, in fact, the lighthouse. Now let's just talk a little bit about some tips that I have, perhaps that helped me at least with running with random teams to go flawless. Alright, so for tips, we're going to have just a couple of them. The first, tip number one, is you have to be at a good power. The first weekend of Trials, which was March 13th, 960 was kind of the generic acceptable power. 960s were able to compete rather well, and you also had your artifacts power, so that it kind of increased everyone's abilities, which made things very nice. This weekend, the weekend of March 20th, Trials lost the artifacts power. So if you were a base power of 960, but you had 970 total, then you would come in this weekend as 960, assuming of course that's what your base power was. For me, I have a base power of 1001 or 1012 when the artifact is included, so I was only power 1001 for Trials this weekend, March 20th. And I noticed in general, it seemed like from chat forums and various other locations on the internet that most people were finding they needed to really be at 980 in order to compete very well, especially with those of us that were 1000 plus. Then we have next weekend, March 27th, and I would imagine you're going to have to be 1000 power on your base power. So whatever your gear power is, that would be your base power. You shouldn't have a super hard time getting to this point, especially if you've got a couple of characters and you take advantage of Iron Banner, which drops with the weekly reset. But just basically, guys, I'm going to go ahead and go out and guess next weekend, March 27th, if you are not 1000 power, you probably won't be able to do jack squat. Thankfully, past 1000 power, you're restricted to pinnacles, and so I don't see like necessarily a huge requirement to have to be like 1010 or something of that nature, because I believe 1010 is the current new max power for your gear this weekend, and pinnacles have a huge RNG bias, and so you never know. So just make sure you guys are 1000 power going into this weekend. Number 2, you guys gotta pay attention to your loadouts. Doesn't necessarily do you the best good to run with your highest geared stuff. I was playing with some guys trying to help them get to their 3 wins, and they were like, oh yeah, I want to use this exit strategy because that's what gets me my highest light. And I was like, well, do you ever use submachine guns or like exit strategy in general? Like, no. I'm like, oh, well, that's cool. So like, you wouldn't know submachine guns are basically useless these days, especially if you're going up against 600 RPM auto rifles like Hardlight or the Summoner. I'm sure there's more than those two. Those are just the two that really come to mind. And so you guys gotta be paying attention to your loadouts and playing to your strengths. I tend to be able to work relatively well between either being a sniper or rolling with the shotgun. And I found with Anomaly being the map this weekend, most people are like, oh, I'm better at sniping. And so I would just run as a shotgunner just to try and keep things when everyone would try to push in. So that's part of the next step, which is to be able to communicate and know the map. If you guys can't talk with each other, and you're like not giving call outs like where people are at, you're not saying like, hey, I'm help, or there's 2 over here, or just kind of giving everyone just in general where folks are at in the map, you're going to have a really hard time unless you guys are all fire team of some really strong like PvP overlords. And this is probably not the best video for you because I'm gearing this for folks who are like me and perhaps aren't like PvP sweat lords. And then finally, you guys just gotta be able to be flexible and move with the map and just make quick adjustments. Nothing sucks more than you're running with the team and 1 or 2 of them take forever just to figure out what's going on and then make a decision about what to do. You either just go for it and like, well, crap, that was a bad decision. Learn, don't do that the next time. Or like, don't really play Trials. Like Trials is really in the moment, and you gotta do things fast. I'm not saying your mobility on your character has to be high. I'm just saying if you're taking, like, you're seeing like people are pinching and you're about to get cut off from whatever it is you're trying to do, you gotta make a choice. Either push one direction and engage that at the enemy, or try to somehow get out of there as quick as you can. And so we're just gonna kind of leave that for the tips. So I guess just in conclusion, have a power of 1000 for the weekend of March 27th. Have good communication and make sure you're using your loadouts to your best advantage and keeping track of what is the meta. So basically, if you're running a hard light with the catalyst, you're probably going to be set most of the time, if not all of the time. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the rewards you get from Trials, specifically Flawless, and then we'll give my opinions about what those rewards are and what I think of them, and we'll end the video. Alright, so here's a look at my Titan with all those trial armors upgrades, including one of the Flawless emblems. So here's just a quick little spin around so you can see that whole ornamental glow. It's definitely worth noting that ornamental glow is not permanent. You have to get Flawless every single week in order to have that elemental glow, and it can be red or white depending upon which emblem you are using. And we'll definitely spend some time talking about that in my opinions of how all the rewards for Trials works. But let's just talk real quick about how you control the glow. So that Flawless Empyrean emblem gives the red glow to your character as well as the weapons, and the Light for the Lost gives the white kind of a glow to your character as well as the weapons. Now the weapons include all the Trials weapons like Summoner, the Tomorrow's Answer rocket launcher, and the Scholar Scout Rifle. Then we've also got an addition of 2 exotic primaries, Outbreak Perfected and Ace of Spades. If you buy the ornament from Eververse, the glow from the emblems also applies to those 2 weapons, and I think that is a pretty nifty thing, and we'll show just a little bit of footage of the Outbreak here before too long. You already saw it in gameplay earlier, as I show it on screen in all its full and total glory. The armor that has dropped has been very mixed feelings, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here before too long. The armor does definitely drop from the Flawless chest quite a bit higher than your actual base power. For example, I went with 1001 Titan. When I opened the Flawless chest, the chest piece that dropped for me was 1004. The gauntlets that dropped for me on the 7th win were 1003. So you definitely get some better gear rocking the Flawless chest when you open that up. However, the stat rolls were not great. The chest piece dropped at 61, and the gauntlets dropped at 62, which seems a little weird to me since the gauntlets were from like regular wins and the chest piece was from Flawless. But we'll move on. Just here's the Outbreak Perfected here. Real quick. So there's your ornament, Mercurial Affliction. I'm not sure what the Ace of Spades one is called, but it's pretty easy to find in Eververse if you're someone that likes using Ace of Spades and you want to pull that sucker up. I don't really use Ace of Spades, and so I was really only intrigued by the Outbreak Perfected one. Okay, so let's just kind of give you guys my opinions about the reward system, and that will conclude the video. For rewards on a card, you will typically go 3 wins, you get a reward. 5 wins, you get a reward. 7 wins, you get a pinnacle reward. And the rewards rotate every week. The first week, the week of March 13th, at 3 wins, you got the Scholar Scout Rifle. At 5 wins, you got the Fusion Rifle. At 5 wins, you got Tomorrow's Answer Rocket Launcher. And at 7 wins, you got the Fusion Rifle. I did not get the Fusion Rifle. That's why I'm blanking on what it is called. For this week, the week of March 20th, at 3 wins, you got the Astral Horizon shotgun, which I highly encourage you guys to try and get, whether it's this weekend or some other weekend when it's in rotation. And then at 5 wins, you got the Summoner auto rifle, which is the same archetype as Hardlight. And then at 7 wins, you got the gauntlets, which is great because Flawless of last week, March 13th, was the gauntlets, and so you're able to pick up the gauntlets this week without having to go Flawless. At a Flawless card, you get the chest piece. And then what is the difference between Flawless armor and regular armor? None. They look the exact same. Stat rolls that seem to fall very similarly. There's not like a huge transparency. Like, oh look, that's a huge difference. Like I mentioned earlier, the gauntlets I got just for 7 wins this week were a 62 roll, and then the chest I got out of the Flawless reward was a 61 stat roll. So it's kind of weird that they'd be so different. But anyways, that's a huge thing to me. Like, why wouldn't Flawless armor at the very least drop Masterworked if it's not going to be a much higher stat roll? Like, you put in all that time and effort to get that armor, and it's kind of like getting a normal armor drop, other than it's definitely Trials armor. Like, I don't think anyone would want to put a different ornament on it. I sure as heck don't. So I'm not sure what the whole thought process was behind not having the armor either drop as Masterworked or just with a really high stat roll, or something where it's like, yeah, you're going to have really good stats on all the stuff that people tend to care about, like intellect, discipline, resilience, and recovery, or mobility. Instead, it just drops like any other piece of gear might drop, which was really weird to me. There's also no adept weapons. Adept weapons were weapons from Destiny 1's Trials of Osiris. They were the same as other Trials weapons, but they would have like an extra perk like Celerity, which is you get all these extra buffs when you are the last man standing, which is a good incentive for a lot of folks to kind of try and go Flawless and get that armor. Currently, I don't see a huge reason to try and go Flawless all the time, especially if it's like not your cup of tea. Like, we got plenty of people like Grenader Jake, which by the way, apparently he's going to be doing free PC and Xbox Xbox carries, so I guess you should check out his thing on Twitch because it's based off of watch time, like how you get like raffle ticket entries and whatnot. But for a lot of people, you put in a ton of time and effort to go flawless. There's other people like Grenader Jake that we're on the second weekend and the dude's getting close to 60 flawless cards already. Like, that's ridiculous, and that's definitely not the majority of Destiny players. I could see if the majority of Destiny players were able to consistently get flawless every single week, then it would probably make sense to not have those flawless rewards be insanely better than everything else, because then, you'd be giving an advantage to the minority. However, if it's just the minority, I don't know. Like, I don't really see a huge con or a huge pro for, like, there's definitely a con for not having adept rewards and having these high stat rolls, but I don't really see a huge pro for having like the rewards as they are now for how they drop out of the flawless chest. I am also seeing that lots of people are seeming to base their playtime based off of the map. For Anomaly is the week of March 20th map. That's the Trials map, and it is rough. It's really small. It's circular. In order to use a sniper rifle, like a lot of people like to do, you have to be really good with it, just because there's not that many snipe lanes, and a lot of everything is pretty close. There's lots of shotgunners running around, and a lot of people seem to get really ticked off with this map, especially when I scroll through my Twitter feed. And the result seems to have been a lot of people are not playing Trials. I went from easily being able to get at least 3 wins with anybody to even 5 wins with really anybody to struggle busing to trying to help people get their shotgun this weekend to even get to 3 wins. And I'm noticing this first win, like if you're playing on these cards, will have like, we'll see the other team will inspect them. We're like, what the hell? This is obviously a carry team when they're carrying somebody, because there'll be like 10 flawless cards and someone else will be like, I'm a 960 hunter. And like it was just ridiculous. And so I think how Trials is currently being run, there needs to be more incentive for everyone to play in order to have a better experience for the game overall. Destiny puts so many of all of their eggs in one basket of Trials, banking on Trials being the thing that keeps the game running and everyone doing it. And I just do not see the general population finding it worth doing Trials. And I want to love showing off my flawless crap and using my Astral Horizon shotgun and Iron Banner this week, but there's just not the appearance of a lot of people trying to play this particular mode right now, due to, I guess, perhaps the map, but definitely because Trials is not very forgiving. I do not like that you have to pick a mercy card or one that gives you an extra win. Destiny 1 had nailed it where you could buy all the boons, and so you had incentive to stock up on some resources and give yourself the ability to have a forgiveness, an extra win, and an extra win upon so many wins, and that was just great. But for some reason, this particular Trials is just a pain in the ass. I don't know what, I want to keep on trying. I definitely plan on playing a lot of Trials this weekend because I want to farm for that God roll Astral Horizon. I think getting something like opening shot and slide shot would be amazing, or like quick draw opening shot or quick draw and snapshot sites would be fantastic. And I just want to see what kinds of rolls I get. And leading out of this video, speaking of rolls, keep in mind the more pieces of gear you unlock, the more pieces of gear you get when turning in tokens for packages from Saint 14. Currently, I can have either the rocket launcher, the shotgun, the auto rifle, the gauntlets, or the chest piece drop. And so trying to farm for this Astral Horizon is being a bit of a pain in the butt, just due to having not like obviously a super huge loot pool, because I am missing the gauntlets. Oh, I do have the gauntlets, but I am missing the fusion rifle. So I have the gauntlets, the chest, the auto, the shotgun, and the rocket launcher that could drop, which makes farming rather intriguing and difficult to do. So to keep that in mind, if you're like, what the heck, I only can get whatever weapons are available from the card this week. No. Like, you have to get to 3 wins in order to turn in tokens, but you can get anything that you have currently acquired from Trials within those package upgrades that you do. So that is one thing to keep in mind when you're trying to decide, should I play Trials and farm for that role? Maybe you should, maybe you can't. You just have to at least get the 3 wins first. And then you could also do what I'm doing, which is once you get to so many wins, you can have the, I forget what the passage is called, but it's the third one from the left on the list, and it gives you more tokens from completing matches. So when I get a loss, I get 2 tokens. When I get a win, I get 5. Normally, when you win, I would get 2 or 3, and when I would lose, I'd only get 1 token. So that's a pretty nifty thing to have. Alright guys, I hope this video kind of gave you some tips, a little overview about all the rewards. Personally, I think the rewards could use a huge revamp. I think it's a little ridiculous. The armor drops at like average stat rolls. Granted, 61 slightly higher than average. I would probably argue that mid 50s is probably that more average stat roll drop, but 61 seems pretty low for a flawless chess piece, especially since we're not getting a masterwork, but you do get an ascendant shard. So if you wanted to masterwork that piece of gear, you are at least given the shard needed in order to actually masterwork it, which is pretty nifty. I would love to see where things are more forgiving. I know they have triumphs set up, so that way those that are trying to get the flawless title need to carry folks to go flawless that have not gone flawless yet, and so that should help the community in general to get more of those flawless tickets than perhaps there would be otherwise. But just in general, I guess I'm a little bit annoyed. Like, I kind of feel like that whole ornamental shader thing was a really, really good idea. Like, I think that was a fantastic idea. But it sucks. It disappears after a week, or whatever the time frame is. I guess I'll find out soon since I have the ornament. Like, I feel like I grinded for hours and put tons and tons of time and effort to try and get this flawless, and I get to lose it after so many days. It seems a little ridiculous. I wish it'd be something more like a month or just the rest of the season, even if it's just a seasonal thing. Maybe that's the solution. If you get flawless once, you get to keep that ornament for the season, which makes sense to me with having trials be indefinitely. It's not going away, at least until Destiny 3 is a thing. Alright guys, thank you all so much for watching. I am Church of Caboose. Have a great week and happy grinding, y'all.